Is landed in Leadership and Enlightenment, a podcast where the guests are exceptional humans that have faced their fears to crest into their best selves, growing into a way they can help their communities, creating opportunities, and sharing their secrets and their tips that they learned along the way. Without further ado, here we are, my friends. Have a great time today and enjoy Leadership and Enlightenment. Dude, it's great to talk to you this week, man. You and I, this Friday thing is just turning out to be really neat.
I look forward to it. And like throughout the week, there are little things that happen and I'm like, oh, mental note, Dean.
Yeah. This is where we're going to go. When you and I first met, you kind of set the stage of how you ended up in Cancun. And I got to tell you, it literally is the storyline for cocktails when we were growing up. I mean, Tom Cruise was like it to me when I saw that movie, thinking about living on a desert island, living on a Caribbean island. And you did it, brother. You have a huge restaurant in what I would consider one of the coolest places in the world, Puerto Morelos, Cancun. It's not well known. Most people go for the fatty names. But the truth is that little area down there is something special. I've had a chance to be there a couple times and check it out. And I got to tell you, it just reminds me of like growing up in the United States back in the 80s. Everything seems to be that feel and texture. And I got to imagine you just are in heaven down there. But what really, really interests me when we first started talking is how you made this move. Coming from growing up in North New Jersey in the U.S., like all of us, and then you had this chance. For us a little bit, just give us a little background on where you came from, my friend. It's an exciting place and an exciting way you live.
Well, thank you. So it's Puerto Morelos. So it's 20 minutes south of Cancun. It's not even considered part of Cancun, but it's very close to Cancun. It's got a very sleepy vibe. It's a very chill town. It's very bohemian. It's very artsy. Long story short, I grew up in Jersey. I grew up in the restaurant business, and I had lived in Colorado for a little while. I lived in Greece for a little while. I grew up in an affluent community, even though my family really didn't have that many resources. My mom kind of struggled to keep us in that community. And that's actually how I got into the restaurant business, was catering kind of saved her. So she would like work all week to keep us in this well-to-do town. But the only way to do it would be to cater on the weekends.
Mm.
So she was, doing whatever she needed to do with the catering industry, usually just like serving, and it was excellent money and it was cash. So there I am now, I'm, 15, 16, and I suddenly, needed to start chipping in, let's say, and coming up with my own money. So it just made sense. So she brought me in. My first gig was dishwashing for a Greek wedding, which is like purgatory. And I loved it. But that would be like the worst thing you could send somebody to do, like the only dishwasher for a Greek wedding with like 30 courses. And the time went so fast and the money was good and cash, pay my car insurance. And so that's how I kind of segued my way in. And there's a whole bunch of other stories about the magic of how the restaurant industry started for me. But that's how I started in the industry. And so I essentially started in washing dishes and worked myself up to chef very quickly in a brew pub, and then moved laterally to some other restaurants as a chef. I lived on an island called Fisher's Island off the coast of Connecticut for a few years.
Oh, wow.
And
that's
that
cool.
was very heavenly. And that was another seasonal gig. This is very seasonal down here in Puerto Morelos because in the winters it's high season, in the summers it's low season, which makes sense.
Yeah.
And then I found my life. So I moved to Greece for a little while. I was a chef there. And then I wanted to move into the front of the house to get experience, because I knew something, and this is what you had asked me, is like kind of how do you find yourself there? And I didn't go to college. There just weren't resources, nor did I have the commitment, nor was it my personality profile at the time. Although now I think I'd love to go to college. I think I'd enjoy it. I think I'd be a nerd, but I definitely was not good at that at the time. But I was definitely I kind of looked at it like this as, and a lot of people do, people say School of Hard Knocks. Well, yeah, I just felt so I would take job positions knowing that it was my university, it was my college, and I was learning a skill that would eventually bring me to where I didn't know I wanted to be. But a part of me did. I think I told you this story that I was sitting in a bar because there's not much else to do when you get off work when you're in the restaurant business. And I had a coaster in front of me. This is when I was 21. I'm 48 now. And I actually I liked to just kind of like brainstorm things, and I just drew a bar, and I'm like, oh, this is like something I'd love to do, is like be in the Caribbean and have my own place and be able to look at the water. And I drew the bar that here we are, 30 years later, that the bar has that shape, and I had forgotten about that experience
Wow.
until a few years ago. It was like
Wow.
a semicircle bar, and the water was right there, and that realization, that drawing, that memory came back to me just a few years ago, and now we've been open for 12 years.
Well, this is kind of where you and I get into a good conversation because I heard points in what you just said already that I could tell you. Growing up in the 80s, I think we all experienced a lot of that. We were working for our weekends, I would say, along the way, delivering papers as kids, getting into the service industry, and it was a good living. I mean, I enjoyed waiting tables and bartending myself and really getting my career started up through the fine dining area. I find it interesting that we felt like we had to, push and be better constantly at that age. And we were always open to that. But what really reflects back is, looking back now myself and realizing how much we were manifesting naturally, just as humans. And even, the idea of growing into this leadership roles that we've taken on in life by being business owners and having employees and responsible for that. Like, this doesn't come lightly. This is really, we see it as gifts that we were given along the line. And that coaster really does resonate in a lot of the ways that we talk about things that I feel too. But we can't deny that there was an energy in that was driving you and that you were really a part of and like kind of giving into. Tell us a little more about like when you got to Cancun or got to Puerto Morelos, it must have felt like it was going to be a certain way. And then after a year or so, the honeymoon period wore off. Like, what were you dealing with? What were the things that people could learn from in that experience?
You had mentioned earlier something about, it might have been scary or something like that. And I do want to go back a little bit to the moment where I decided to move down here, and went through, jumped through the hoops to do it legally. And I wanted to do everything correctly. I shouldn't I was never worried or scared. I had like such total faith in every decision I was making at the time. And
Interesting.
and I think this is the point that you're asking about, because it took a long time, and I didn't realize it until I was discussing it with a friend customer, and they said, "Whoa, how did you do this?" And I'm and I said to somebody at one point, and then I realized it as I said it. If I knew then what I know now, I'm not sure I would have done it, because
Wow.
it took such a series of events to happen to lead me to have a restaurant that now has been open for 12 years. But even at the time of even more than 2 years being open is to success, no?
Yes.
So when I found myself having been open for a certain period of time, and I looked back at the steps that could have gone wrong or what, and I didn't think about those steps at the time. I was just going through them with some sort of and I don't mean to sound cheesy or mystical or this or that, but there really was some people might say it's angels. Some people might say that you're tuned into a frequency, and that's more what I believe. I believe I was very much tuned into something or connected to something in every single step of the way, because when I look back at all the things that could have gone wrong, or it's really incredible, because it's
Yeah.
definitely a different series of things that can happen when you're not in the United States.
Yeah. How do you describe that? What do you call that? That comfort that you have around you that it's going to be okay or that things are driving you a certain way?
I mean, that's a good question. I think that's exactly what we're trying to find, and we're trying
Yeah.
to understand, is how do you enter that zone? Because then there have been times in these last 12 years where there's been very challenging, really challenging times. I mean, COVID obviously was one of them,
Yeah.
and amongst some other ones that are pretty personal to me, of experiences that have happened, where I'm like, I get scared. I felt frightened, and but you're in it, and you're this far in it, and you just keep going. And recently I've reconnected with mindfulness, and even like this week, since we've last spoken, Dean, maybe you can sense my energy. I have like an extraordinary amount of things going on right now that are very intense, and I'm in a very different state than I have been. I've been very relaxed the last several
Awesome.
weeks since we've been talking.
Great.
But it's a
Yeah.
challenge because now
Yeah.
now I'm uh, trying to maintain this mindfulness and spirituality, mindfulness, we'll say, connectivity, while I want to kind of jump out of my skin with um, adrenaline and
Yeah.
and there's so much going on.
It's natural. That's so natural. And if I could reflect back in a little bit, I kind of feel for me, it's like a comforting voice, like your grandmother whispering in your ear, is what it feels like to me. It's like there's like this yes and no going on within me. And I always know the no's because I'm trying to convince myself that it's a good idea or make it happen. And I always know the yeses because it seems to just fall in alignment. I call it a flow when you're in that flow. And that's why I believe that you and we've always, bonded around this conversational point because it's bigger than us. It's something that we really can, reflect back and look at and say, how did I get from this stereotypic conditioning mindset that I was raised in and move into this, without a better word, entrepreneurial thought process where you're responsible for all your actions and you're accountable to essentially shine light and move energy in a certain direction that your team can follow and that, you can lead from. And it's not a stereotypic I'm the boss and you must follow energy. I can see it in you. It's this like this light that's shining out of you that people can see and they follow it and they join you with it. And I think that, as your friend, I could say that I see that around you and it allows me also to mirror into that energy. And I love how humble you are because you essentially don't realize like you're living the dream that everybody that is in a job that they're going to 9 to 5, wishing for more and have a ceiling to go, geez, that Anthony did it. And I love to say that, we're not special. We haven't necessarily, or no human necessarily does anything that is that magnanimous. But to be able to motivate and inspire people around you the way you have, and tell us a little about the community. You've grown into a pillar of that community and you support it in a certain way that now you're included. And this is, for a lot of people don't realize Mexico is a beautiful, beautiful country with just amazing humans. I've had chances to work down there myself and just if I had a chance to move somewhere, it would probably be my first choice. And give us a little feel of that.
Well, it would be awesome to have you down here, man.
I would,
The community it's an interesting community. It's for 3 to 6 months. There's a ton of expats, a lot of people that live down here from the United States and from Canada. It's very dynamic. In July and August, we'll get a lot of people from Europe because that's when their vacations are. And then, of course, there's the nationals. There's the Mexicans that live here. Coming down here as an American, and I didn't speak Spanish when I arrived here. I knew like 40
oh,
words of
wow.
kitchen Spanish, like
Mm,
caliente, saca la
yeah.
comida, take out the food, whatever. And so when I moved here, um, that was I brought somebody with me that worked with me in the United States that I trusted, who was kind of my translator, and I trained him on the fly to help me with the restaurant to be the general manager. And he left after 1 year, and it was okay. But that was something that Spanish being my second language, and when you start to learn a language at like almost 40, like it doesn't, you don't learn it like a 7-year-old kid could learn a foreign language in one summer hanging out like on the playground. But like as our brains become less
Yeah.
absorbed or malleable as we get older, it's a different animal. So and I got very it's very it's I feel very comfortable speaking to guests, but when you're speaking to guests in their home country and I'm a guest here in their country, it's a
Yeah.
different animal. And
Yeah. I
and
can imagine.
and it can be it can be, what's the word, intimidating,
Mm-hmm.
because and that's me, like I really want, even to people in my native tongue, I feel very respectful towards, well, anybody, but like most of all if you're going to come into my establishment. and
Yeah.
and I always felt it being disrespectful if I didn't speak in their native tongue or if I wasn't fluent in it. And it took me what, like 6 years here to be able to, like, all of a sudden you realize that you can understand the radio or you can have a phone call with your bank, and that's the moment where you kind of feel where you're pretty fluent. I'll
That's
never
cool.
be native speaker, but it took me until now, like over a decade, that now like I'm comfortable speaking to the local municipio, the municipality, and working with them. We're working on events now.
I
We're
love that.
working on a salsa festival here in the park, and they're like excited to have like they kind of always thought I was either like shy or weird, but it was just that like I didn't feel comfortable with the language. And now that I'm comfortable with it, I just had a conference call with 6 other people, all in Spanish, and I'm like throwing ideas out there, and they're like, "Oh, cool, thank you," and like
Neat.
not like thank you, but like this guy really does have something that like he didn't just open this restaurant, but he does have something to offer and work with us, and it's felt really good.
Yeah. Well, I think that, if we were going to close this segment with a great point, that's it. Is everything I've ever heard from you, it's not about the money. It's about this idea of community that you created and this life experience that you live in and the energy that you're able to guide within your own flow. And to have those challenges and of course those fears, which I'm going to guess, you developed a technique younger in your life where you were able to dig in when it was scary, and you really saw that as a challenge and not something to run away from. And I'm going to guess that that's probably the key element here ultimately down the road, is that you learned how to choose to move forward regardless of the circumstances. And your intent is for a community and an energy that brings love into the equation and light. And that is really the respectful, moment of this podcast, and realizing, leadership enlightenment is realizing it's not about making money or helping other people make money. It's about creating a community of energy that you're responsible for and that you move it forward in a way that's healthy and others can grow from. And you're an amazing example, my friend. You put it out there the right way, and I'm proud to call you a great friend. I really am. And it would be neat to move down there with you, man.
It would be, and the feeling is mutual, man. Every time I talk to you, you know, I get inspired, and you say things that stick with me, and I think about them during the week. I'm like, wow, how did he know to tell me that at that moment? And that's part of the. I mean, we talk about that just with life, with just talking to, but like it's really like it's extra, like on steroids with you.
Well, it's the universe. And that's what we love, is that once we give in to that idea that it's not us, then we can handle these stress levels. I had somebody this week ask me, Dean, how do you handle all the elements? And I said, I don't. I wake up every day and there's only so much time in that day that I can work into it, enjoy it, and I see it as an expansion within that day, not something in the future I'm doing. And I'm able to keep my heart rate in a place where I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I'm not trying to get through it to get to the next thing, like you said. And I'm living in that quality of life. When you find yourself there, what happens is you create relationships with, other people in the same manner. And I call us light beings, and we mirror, and,
Right.
and the universe likes to talk through us. And so the things that you've heard is, that's the blessing of the gift that you deserve. It's not really anything I've actually said, but somebody's been there for me in the same light. And I just love how we connect it. And I'm looking forward to more podcast episodes with you. You're going to be my recurring guy, bro. You know that. We're going to do
Well,
our monthly.
something that is worth mentioning before we close this out is that we were brought together by somebody for business purposes in order to, unite for financial gain or whatever. And you and I have never spoken about business, nor do we
No.
care to, because we realized that from the moment we started talking, we realized
Yep.
that our conversations were bigger. We're
Yeah.
bigger than that. And
Yeah.
what we're talking about is more important than that.
It is. But, in respect for the idea of anybody going to Cancun and they have to, come down and visit you in Puerto Morelos, name your restaurant, give your shout out, man.
La Sirena restaurant in downtown Puerto Morelos. We are right in the town square on the second and third floor. We're right behind the lighthouse. So if you find the lighthouse, just turn around and go up the stairs, and here we are. Thank
And
you.
you do group business too? Well, how big a group business can you do there?
We can fit up to 300 people. We encompass 2
Yeah.
floors. On each floor,
Okay.
up to 150 or even more people. And we do a lot of
Awesome.
events and weddings and mice and many different.
You and I are going to put something together around that. I mean, those of you that don't know out there, I'm a meeting broker, and this is how Anthony and I kind of got connected in the idea of travel and bringing groups into Cancun. But like he said, we could see a bigger relationship, and we've not actually gone there, but I know something is going to come around that. And when it does, you and I'll celebrate it in the same way, man.
Exactly.
Congratulations, brother. I really appreciate what you've done down there. You're inspiring. Thanks for sharing with us.
Thank you, Dean. I appreciate you.
Well, there we go. Another amazing example of the universe working in its magnificent way today. Appreciate you showing up, and look forward to seeing you again at Leadership and Enlightenment.